constantly expressed his praise and admiration for all that he did. It's a different age. And that different age had to have a new and fresh teaching to meet its requirements for the happiness of the people. And just as Shakyamuni predicted, Nichiren Daishonin appeared in order to translate the theory of the Lotus Sutra into action. The action being the Daimoku and the inscription of the Daiga Honsu. Okay, Ricky?
The teaching which I, Nichiren, am now propagating may seem limited, but it is actually most profound. This is because it goes even deeper than the teachings expounded by Tiantai and Dengyo. It reveals the three important matters contained in the Juryo chapter of the essential teaching. To practice only the 7 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo may appear limited, yet since this law is the master of all Buddhas of the past, present and future, the teacher of all bodhisattvas in the universe, and the guide that enables all human beings to attain Buddhahood, its practice is incomparably profound. The sutra states, the wisdom of all Buddhas is infinitely profound and immeasurable. All Buddhas means every Buddha throughout the universe and in every age of the past, present and future, including both Dainichi Buddha of the Shingon sect and Amida Buddha of the Jodo sect. It represents every single Buddha and Bodhisattva of any sutra or sect whatsoever, from the infinite past to the infinite future, even Shakyamuni Buddha himself.
Thank you. So this paragraph is saying that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo embraces everything. All the teachings and philosophies of the past, the present and the future are contained in Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. In addition, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, of course, is the entity of everything. And then he says that it reveals the 3 important matters contained in the Juryo chapter of the essential teaching. He's referring there to the 3 great secret laws. That is to say, the first being the invocation of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The second being the object of worship, the Gonzen. And the third being the sanctuary, the center point or prime point of the Buddha's land, which surrounds to an ever-increasing degree those Gohonzens throughout the world. So these are the 3 essentials to the practice of Buddhism, the 3 great secret laws. So this Gohonzen here, of course, has an effect on the whole of Europe. The Gonzen in one's own home, in the sanctuary of your sitting room, or wherever, has an effect on all of your environment. The Daigonzen of the 3 great secret laws of Taiseki has an effect on the whole world. This is the principle of the sanctuary, the 3rd great secret law. So these 3 secret laws were revealed by Nichiren Daishonin in order to explain his practice, and he took a lifetime to do it. And in fact, of course, the ultimate sanctuary where the Daiga Honsen is placed was completed in 1972, when there was sufficient power in the form of faith and also material power to be able to establish such a place for people from all over the world to worship the Daiga Honsen, the prime point of Causton Rufu. So even only the other day, the high priest reminded people that even in time, that high sanctuary may be proved to be not the ultimate one. So what he meant by that, I'm not too sure. But presumably even the Shohondo may in the end prove to be inadequate for the number of people who will be practicing in the entire world. That's something we can remain to see. So he says in this paragraph, this law is the master of all the Buddhas of the past, present and future, the teacher of all bodhisattvas in the universe, and the guide that enables all human beings to attain Buddhahood. This law, in other words, which is the master of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, is the link, isn't it, between all those who practice it, who work for Causton Rufu to overcome the negative and destructive force of life. This law of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is what enables us all to be in rhythm with each other, provided, of course, we make sure to continue to practice it regularly. Through this law of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, the actions of people in Peru and Brazil can relate exactly to the actions of people in France or the UK, and in that turn relate exactly to the actions required and emanating from the wisdom of the Bhagavans. So this is why, for example, someone maybe in Scotland may say to me, you know, it's a funny thing you said that in your guidance the other day, because we started to do that, you know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I feel so happy about that. And rightly they should, because it means those members in Scotland are in rhythm with the Lord, in the same way as often we can anticipate sensuous guidance in some way. This is proof of the fact that we're in rhythm throughout the whole globe. So this is a very encouraging thing. If I discover that I'm already in NSUK we're doing what Sensei mentions, that's great proof for me that we're on the right lines, that we must be keeping our practice going strongly, and that we're truly in rhythm, therefore, with everyone else in the world. So the law of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is the mystic link, isn't it, between us all. Even in a group or district, that link exists between the members so long as those members are practicing regularly. I hope it's also clear from what Nichiren Daishonin said that all the Buddhas have chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, or its equivalent. So in the case of of Tiantai, we know from what Nichiren Daishonin teaches us that he chanted and meditated on a 24 character chant. But the meaning of that was the same. So Shakyamuni, Dengyo, Tiantai, and all the Buddhas of all time in the entire universe have always chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. The reason why they were unable to teach others Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, or its equivalent in the Chinese language of those days, was that it wasn't the time. Shakyamuni Buddha had said that the time for the law to appear, the true law, would be after his pure law no longer had the power to save the people. He also said this would be the time of Mappo, when the world would be in a state of confusion and chaos. So there are 5 conditions that determine that the time is right for the teaching of the true law. These are that it relates in the flow from previous teachings. In other words, Shakyamuni taught in a certain way, and this eventually led to the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin in a perfect flow. Secondly, that the intellectual capacity of the people should be sufficient to be able to embrace and understand the true law. So of course this means that people have to understand that they have the potential to be a Buddha. People who lived in Shakyamuni's times could never have believed that. They were very simple peasants. Shakyamuni was a prince, an astounding, charismatic figure. No peasant of those days could have believed that he could be like Shakyamuni Buddha. But in these days where we're more educated, we have bigger heads. We're able to somehow, sort of, begin to imagine that perhaps we could be a Buddha. Difficult to understand, but we sort of have enough conceit to believe it. And then the age must be right. I've already explained that to you. The age for the true teaching, which relates in rhythm to the planet entering its eons of decline. And the state of the country. Nichiren Daishonin appeared in one of the worst periods of disaster in all of Japan's history. Mr. Toda appeared after the dropping of the atomic bomb and the chaos that existed in Japan. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo appeared in the United Kingdom as our troubles and difficulties appeared to be beginning to grow greater. Violence, riots, the Falkland Islands, who knows what may be to come. The time is right. And lastly, that it suits the conditions in which the people live. Practicing Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism is not sitting on mountain tops or burying yourself in a monastery for a lifetime. This isn't suitable for the people as a whole, is it? The people as a whole must have something which they can practice in their ordinary daily life. And of course, that exactly suits the teachings which Nichiren Daishonin revealed. So we need have no doubt that now is the time for Causton Rufu. Now is the time when we can confidently hoist that flag of Causton Rufu in our hearts, knowing that this is the time for the true teaching and that people will practice it and that more and more will do so and that Causton Rufu will ultimately be achieved through that. As you know, Gosho said, Nichiren Daishonin said, first 1, then 2, then 3, then 100 will follow. This is because the time is right. Okay, let's have a 5-minute break and then we'll continue. Thank you very much.
Next, what is meant by the wisdom of all Buddhas? It is the true entity manifested in all phenomena, which Shakyamuni revealed in terms of the 10 factors to lead all people to enlightenment. What then is this entity? It is nothing other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Tiantai states, the profound principle of true entity is the original law of Myoho Renge-kyo. The true entity manifested in all phenomena indicates the two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and Taho, seated together in the treasure tower. Taho represents all phenomena, and Shakyamuni the true entity. The two Buddhas also indicate the two principles of object, Kyo, and subject, Chi, or reality and wisdom. Taho Buddha signifies the object, and Shakyamuni the subject. Although these are two, they are fused into one in the Buddha's enlightenment.
So this is quite a difficult paragraph. The true entity, Nichiren Daishonin says, which Shakyamuni revealed in terms of the 10 factors. So in the Hoben chapter that we recite every day, we recite Nyoze So, Nyoze Sho, Nyoze Tai, Nyoze Riki, Nyoze Sa, Nyoze In, Nyoze En, Nyoze Ka, Nyoze Ho, Nyoze Honma Kukyo To. Those are the 10 factors. And I haven't got time to give a lecture on them now. So basically it is through these 10 factors that the 10 worlds are expressed in absolute consistency from beginning to end. That is to say, if we're in the world of anger, then that world of anger will be expressed in every single way and means from our lives, both outwards into our environment and inwards into ourselves. So this is what the 10 factors are, the means by which that expression is made. So the entity of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, he says, is in all phenomena. That is to say, all phenomena, including human beings, innately possess the Buddha state. And if they are in rhythm with the law of life, can express that Buddha state through the 10 factors, out into this world and back into themselves. So in other words, in all the 9 worlds, Buddhahood exists. Therefore, a Buddha is an ordinary human being, albeit an enlightened one. Therefore, Buddhahood is in all of our lives, even though we may be born in what I usually call the mud and slush of this age of Mappa. So, of course, through the practice, we begin to reveal glimpses of this Buddhahood, don't we? We see wisdom where previously we wouldn't have noticed it. It wouldn't have appeared. We find ourselves compassionate where before, in such a case, we would never have been compassionate. We see courage rising up in us where before we would have probably been weak and cowardly. We sense the life force of the Buddha state sometimes surging through us. Then he refers to the treasure tower. The treasure tower which appeared in the ceremony of the air in the Lotus Sutra, which was preached by Shakyamuni Buddha. This is important because the treasure tower is the basis for the Gohonzon. When Nichiren Daishonin inscribed the Gohonzon, he said that it was exact as the print matches the wood block, exact in relation to the ceremony of the air, the ceremony of the treasure tower, which Shakyamuni had taught. In other words, the Gohonzon in itself is evidence that Nichiren Daishonin's teachings are in the direct flow of orthodox Buddhism down through the ages from Shakyamuni. And in the Lotus Sutra, in the ceremony of the treasure tower, and also on the Gohonzon, the principle of Kyo and Chi, which he mentions here, is illustrated. It is not only illustrated, but it is. So I must now help to explain to you this principle of Kyo and Chi. In the Lotus Sutra, the treasure tower appears with only Taho Buddha, a legendary Buddha, sitting in it. And it comes to a halt as it glides through the air. It has appeared from the earth and is moving towards Shakyamuni. It's a huge thing, rather like a vast spaceship. And Taho is sitting in it. Then, as the treasure tower comes to rest, the door is opened and Taho beckons to Shakyamuni, who's standing watching this amazing thing approaching. He beckons to him to come inside. So Shakyamuni gets in, turns round, sits down next to Taho Buddha, looking out at all the disciples and at the whole world. And then someone raises above their heads a banner on which is written Myoho Renge Kyo. So Shakyamuni Buddha represents the wisdom that arises from within us through devoting ourselves to Myoho Renge Kyo, which is the law of life. In other words, Shakyamuni is our subjective wisdom. Taho Buddha represents the reality of life. Taho Buddha represents, in other words, the eternal and unchanging truth about the universe, which is revealed in Nichiren Daishonin's teachings through such principles as the cycle of birth and death and latency, the law of cause and effect, the interdependence of all phenomena, Eshofuni, and the great theory of Ichinen Sanzen, that whatever our life state is, we shall express it both to ourselves and to society and to the land itself in the most powerful possible way one can imagine. So if Buddhahood is our life state, then it's Buddhahood that will be expressed in 3,000 different ways at any moment in one's life. So all these great principles, each of which is a lecture on itself, are contained, aren't they, in the eternal and unchanging truth about the universe, which is represented by the figure of Tahoe Buddha. So therefore, in that ceremonial, when Shakyamuni sat down with Tahoe, and when, which they did, they nodded in agreement to each other, this represented the fusion of our subjective wisdom with the absolute reality of universal life. In other words, enlightenment. The fusion between our ability to understand through the wisdom of the Buddha state that exists in us, that to understand that reality of life as a whole. So this is represented on the stones. Afterwards, if you wish, you can ask a Japanese person to show you Shakyamuni Buddha, the characters for Shakyamuni and the characters for Tahoe. So how is this fusion achieved? In no other way but through Nam. Nam, devotion to Myoho Renge Kyo, which is that law of life, the law which is enlightened to all the amazing workings of this universe and everything that exists in it. So we devote ourselves, Nam, to that law through chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo and doing Gongyo and the three practices as a human being. And gradually, step by step, that fusion becomes not only perfect for a moment or two, but it continues to be perfect throughout the day and throughout the night. That is when we attain Buddhahood, and it takes time. We have to dig at it and work at it maybe over 15 or 20 years. But this is available to any human being, and this is why on the Gonzen, below Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nichiren put the character for his name, Nichiren. A human being who had become fused with the law of life itself. So through chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, every single time we do it, though we can't realize it often in our conscious minds, we are fusing our wisdom with the reality of life. Gradually, through that, our enlightenment busts through all those poisons and clutter that get in the way of us understanding it in our conscious minds. Through digging away at it day after day, year after year. Until the end, we are one, and we then experience absolute freedom, not bound by anything in our imagination. So this is fusion, is KYOCHI MYOGO. MYOGO meaning fusion. Kyo is Tahoe, the reality of life of the universe. And Chi is us with our wisdom, subjective wisdom. So we can get an idea of this principle, perhaps, by considering various things in ordinary life. A great violinist, for instance, someone like Yehudi Menuhin, plays incredible music, extracts amazing sound from that instrument, because he's virtually one with it. The violin and the udimenium are like one thing. Or if you take a show jumper on his horse, or on her horse, the horse and the person have to be like one to achieve great results. Even a conductor with a great orchestra, if they're going to produce incredible music that really astounds everybody and impresses them for a lifetime, it's because the conductor is one with the musicians and with every instrument in that orchestra. So that gives you an idea, in a sort of rather mundane way, of what KYOCHI MYOGO is. We became one, don't we, with the life of the universe, and we understand it gradually in its entirety. So through this fusion we become enlightened. Now, the Gohonzon is the embodiment of this perfect fusion in itself. Nichiren Daishonin said, I am inscribing my life, the life of a human being, in perfect harmony or fusion with the law. So the Gohonzon contains both Kyo and Chi within itself, right? But when we are practicing to the Gohonzon, we are Chi and the Gohonzon is Kyo. So we are linking our life, though it may be filled with all sorts of poisons and all the rest of it, with the absolute embodiment of enlightened life itself. And through us Chi relating and fusing with that Kyo, we can attain enlightenment. So this is why Nichiren Daishonin says that the moment we sit in front of the Gohonzon and chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, we are in an enlightened state. Though, of course, in our conscious minds, still cluttered with bits and pieces of the three poisons, we can't understand that clearly ourselves. This is because the 9 worlds are in the state of Buddha, just the same as the Buddha is in each of those 9 worlds. On the other hand, unless this was so, Buddha wouldn't be a human being, would they? So therefore, KYOCHI MYOGO is not necessarily some incredible mystic experience. Not some amazing thing, which uplifts us and we get a feeling which we've never had before. It can be, but not necessarily. We can feel awful as we chant, can't we? Angry, envious, tired, whatever. This is because, again, Buddhahood exists in all the 9 worlds, and the 9 worlds exist in Buddha. Because Buddha is a human being, that we feel like that. But whatever happens, what Nichiren Daishonin is saying is that even though you feel angry, or envious, or upset, or fed up, when you're chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, as long as you're doing it, making the effort sincerely, you are actually in KYOCHI MYOGO. As long as you're trying your best, despite all these difficulties and feelings, we are in KYOCHI MYOGO. Therefore, even though we can't feel it, we are changing our lives by every Daimoku we chant. We are, as Nichiren Daishonin said in the Gosho, gradually opening up the doors to Buddhahood. So the doors are rusty, squeaky, oily, the locks are all messy. We have to push like mad to get it open. We try, we get it open a bit, and then they spring back. It's an incredible struggle. But gradually that shaft of brilliant light coming through that door is gradually getting greater and greater the more we go on practicing. And of course, that is why we get these experiences of Buddhism in our daily life. That's why we get benefits. That's why we find that we are in fact protected. So this is proof of the fact that when we're actually in front of the Dharmism, we are in a state of Buddhahood. Otherwise those experiences would never happen. So of course people's reactions to this are very strange sometimes. Nichiren Daishonin recognizes this in this paragraph. He says, the teaching which I, Nichiren, am now propagating may seem limited, but it is actually most profound. He's quite well aware that people will say, ridiculous, how can you be enlightened through just chanting 7 characters? This is, of course, our conceit, isn't it? Our ego. We find it all too natural. There's a tendency in human beings to want to show off, to want to feel that they've had some amazing mystic occurrence, or some vision. How many founders of religions have started through saying that they've had a vision from God? There's nothing like that in Buddhism. In another Gosho, Nichiren Daishonin said, Buddhahood is nothing extraordinary. Buddhahood is part of life. We get our experiences of it, our glimpses of it, in our ordinary daily lives, whatever we may be doing. So anyway, tonight at the discussion you have together, let's have experiences of Buddhahood. Glimpses of Buddhahood in our own lives through, of course, our practice, but in the midst of the mud and slush of Mappa. Right with you.
These teachings are of prime importance. They mean that earthly desires are enlightenment, and that the sufferings of life and death are nirvana. When one chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, even during the sexual union of man and woman, then earthly desires are enlightenment, and the sufferings of life and death are nirvana. Sufferings are nirvana only when one realizes that the entity of human life throughout its cycle of birth and death is neither born nor destroyed. The Fugen Sutra states, even without extinguishing their earthly desires or denying the 5 desires, they can purify all of their senses and eradicate all of their misdeeds. It is stated in the Nakashikan that the ignorance and dust of desires are enlightenment, and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. The Juryo chapter of the Lotus Sutra says, this is my constant thought, how can I cause all living beings to gain entry to the highest way and quickly attain Buddhahood? And the Hoben chapter states, all phenomena are manifestations of the law and are essentially eternal. The entity of all phenomena is none other than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
So here, Nichiren Daishonin deals with the main subject, in fact, of the title of this Gosho. Changing desires into enlightenment, and sufferings are enlightenment in itself. So changing desires into enlightenment, it's a pity people have got to go, isn't it? Okay, changing desires into enlightenment is in Japanese known as Bonno Soku Bodai. Bonno Soku Bodai. Turning sufferings into enlightenment is Shoji Soku Neha. I think it's pointless to continue with the Gosho after the members of this.
Shall we just wait here, stay here, and then when we finish we prepare the lunch?
What do you think? It's a shame for people to have to miss it, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, doesn't matter, does it? Yeah. Let's get everyone back. It's a shame for them to have to miss it. After all, we're here to study the Gosho, aren't we? Ask everyone to come up. Otherwise it's a pity, isn't it?
We don't like lunch.
What?
We quite like to go to and have a late lunch.
Okay, yes. Better get through it. Yes, changing desires into enlightenment is bonno, same word we discovered yesterday, desires, soku, bodai. Bodhi meaning enlightenment or Buddhahood. And turning sufferings into enlightenment, shoji, soku, neha. Soku means is the same as or equals. Shoji Soku Neha, turning sufferings into enlightenment. So both these principles are in fact on the Gohonzon. And likewise, you can ask somebody afterwards to show you it. Sorry to bring you up and down like yo-yos, but we thought it was better. This is so important, this Gosho, not to miss anything. So, just to start again there, in this paragraph, Nichiren Daishonin is dealing with the two main and most important principles of changing desires into enlightenment and turning sufferings, or transforming sufferings into enlightenment. Changing desires into enlightenment, Bonno Soku Bodai. Sufferings into enlightenment, Shoji Soku Neha. And both these principles are included on the Gohonzon. They're so important. So of course, we discussed this a little bit yesterday, but in a very natural way, once we begin to discover that chanting the Daimoku has power, inevitably, of course, as humans, we want to chant for those things we feel we need for our happiness or for the happiness of others. And this chanting activates the Buddha state, which in turn, of course, is bringing wisdom and perception working into one's life. Also, the other qualities of the Buddha state, such as compassion and courage. So through this wisdom activated by chanting for one's desires, one then begins to see quite clearly whether that desire is for one's happiness or not. The wisdom of one's Buddha state, it tells you that. If you discover that what you've been chanting away for is in truth not for your happiness, quite naturally you'll either stop chanting for it or you'll change direction to what you then believe or can see is for your happiness. So whichever way you look at it, through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo for your desires, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is so powerful that it can only lead you on a course towards value and happiness in your life. This is what the law of life desires, of course. What it's aiming for all the time is a valuable, buoyant, vibrant world. So this is why, with courage, you can chant with a single mind for whatever you feel is needed for your happiness, for someone else's happiness. And you can be absolutely sure that because you activate the wisdom of the Buddha state, if that is for your happiness, you will receive it. If it is not, your wisdom will clearly show you that it's not, and you'll change direction in a very natural and perfectly happy and satisfied way. So in another Gosho, Nichiren Daishonin said, like a lantern in the dark, like a strong supporting arm on a treacherous path, the Gohonzon will protect you, Lady Nichinyo, wherever you go. To emphasize this, in this particular paragraph, Nichiren Daishonin says that even if you chant in the midst of making love, which is perhaps the most emotional possible experience that a human being can have, you will be enlightened. Even in the midst of that highly emotional and absorbed state, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo will be working, is more powerful, and will keep you in the state of enlightenment. So there is nothing more powerful in the world than Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. After all, it's the force that does everything we see around us. It keeps everything ticking. The tides coming and going and everything else. The seasons changing in this universe of ours. So of course that same principle applies to transforming sufferings into enlightenment. Because we're suffering, we chant to overcome it. And through that chanting, we become enlightened to the nature of those sufferings and to the way in which to overcome them. What an incredible difference, isn't it? If any of you have practiced Christianity, to the Christian teaching. where you are asked to obey 10 commandments, which you find you can't obey, and therefore you spend a lifetime feeling guilty, feeling a bit of a failure. Buddhism is not asking you to deny anything. On the contrary, the power of it is so great that it can transform everything into enlightenment. So truly, this is a precious treasure that we have in the Causton. No wonder Nichiren Daishonin described this as a precious gem, placed in his sleeve almost without the asking. So every day in Gongyo, at the end of the Jigake, we recite Maiji Zazen, Igaro Shujo, Tokunyu Mujodo, Sokujoju Busshin. That means, this is my constant thought. How can I cause all living beings to gain entry to the highest way and quickly attain Buddhahood? So if we know that meaning, if we can feel it in our life, every time we do Maiji Zazen in Igaro Shujo, Tokunyu Mujodo, Sokujoju Busshin, really we should feel incredible gratitude for this precious gem that by an amazing piece of good fortune on our paths we managed to find. Do we feel this gratitude in Gongyo? These lines at the end of every recitation of Jigage can be a good check on that point. Am I feeling grateful to the Buddha today? Sokujoju Busshin. And that can help us to pull ourselves up and try to really live each of those prayers and feel the gratitude which they're all about. Because this is part of the purpose of Gongyo that I was describing yesterday, which is purification. Gratitude is that purification.